There are some words that you never forget. Words that lodge themselves in your heart and stay there, no matter how hard you try to push them out. For me, those words were whispered in a hallway, late at night, when she thought I couldn't hear. She doesn't belong here anymore. I heard her. I heard every syllable. And in that moment, something inside me shifted. Not broke, I didn't break, but shifted, like a piece of furniture that has been moved just slightly out of place. Everything looked the same, but nothing felt the same. Her name is Claire. She is my daughter-in-law. And for 5 years, I lived in the home she shared with my son, David. I helped raise their children. I cooked their meals. I kept their garden. I thought I was part of the family. I thought I belonged. But that night, standing in the hallway, holding a glass of water I could no longer drink, I heard the truth. I didn't belong. Not anymore. Maybe I never had. I didn't confront her. I didn't cry. I didn't pack my bags that night. I just stood there, in the dark, listening to the rain, and I let the words settle into me. She doesn't belong here anymore. And then I went back to my room, closed the door, and sat on the edge of my bed until the sun came up. My name is Margaret. I am 68 years old. I have been a widow for 12 years. I have 2 children, a daughter who lives across the country, and a son who lives 20 minutes away, but might as well be 1,000 miles. I have learned that belonging is not something you can demand. It is something that is given. And when it is taken away, there is nothing you can do but find a new place to belong. This is my story. To understand how I ended up in that hallway listening to those words, you have to go back. Back to when I first moved in with David and Claire. After my husband, Robert, passed away, the house felt too big, too quiet. Every room held a memory. Every chair held the shape of him. I tried to stay. I tried to make it work.
But
the silence was unbearable. David was worried about me. He called every day. He visited on weekends. And then one evening he said, "Mom, why don't you come live with us? We have the space. The kids would love having you here. And you wouldn't have to be alone." I hesitated. I liked my independence. I liked my little house, with its garden and its memories. But the thought of being surrounded by family, by the laughter of my grandchildren, was tempting. "Are you sure?" I asked. Claire might not want her mother-in-law underfoot. David laughed. "Claire loves you, Mom. She said it was her idea."
I didn't know then that he was lying.
Or maybe he wasn't lying. Maybe Claire had said it. Maybe she meant it at the time.
People change.
Feelings change. I try to remember that. I sold my house. I packed my things, my china, my photographs, my mother's rocking chair. I moved into their home, into the room they had prepared for me, a sunny room at the back of the house with a window that looked out onto the garden. The first year was lovely. I helped with the children. Emily, who was 4, and Jacob, who was 2. I read them stories. I pushed them on the swings. I made them pancakes on Saturday mornings. I felt useful. I felt needed. I felt like I belonged.
Claire was kind to me then.
She would sit with me on the porch in the evenings and we would talk about her work, about the children, about nothing in particular. She called me Mom. She hugged me goodbye. I thought I had gained a daughter. I didn't know that underneath her smiles, something was growing. Something I couldn't see until it was too late. The changes started slowly. So slowly that I almost didn't notice them at first. Claire stopped sitting with me on the porch. She said she was tired. She said she had work to do. I understood. She was a busy woman. Then she stopped calling me Mom. She called me Margaret. It was small, but I noticed. I told myself I was being sensitive. I told myself it didn't mean anything. Then the comments started. Small comments, dropped like pebbles into a still pond. Ripples that spread and spread. "We don't really need help with the children anymore," she said one day. "They're getting older. They have their own routines." I nodded. "Of course. I don't want to interfere." "You're not interfering," she said, but her voice was tight. "It's just we need our space." I started staying in my room more. I would read, or knit, or look out the window at the garden I used to tend. Claire had hired a gardener. She said I shouldn't work so hard. She said I should rest.
I didn't want to rest.
I wanted to be useful. I wanted to belong. The tension grew, not in loud arguments or slammed doors, but in silences. Long, heavy silences that filled the kitchen when I walked in. Conversations that stopped when I entered the room. Looks exchanged between David and Claire that I couldn't read. I tried to talk to David about it. One night, after the children were in bed, I knocked on his office door. "David," I said, "is everything okay? I feel like something has changed."
He didn't look at me.
He stared at his computer screen. "Everything's fine, Mom. You're imagining things." "Am I?" "Claire doesn't talk to me anymore. She doesn't look at me." David sighed. "She's under a lot of pressure at work. It's not about you." But I knew. A mother knows. The night I heard her whisper.
It was a Tuesday.
I remember because I had made meatloaf for dinner, and Claire had pushed it around her plate without eating. I asked if she wasn't hungry. She said she was fine, but her voice was cold. I went to bed early. I couldn't sleep. The house was quiet, but my mind was not. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, going over every conversation, every look, every small moment that had led me here. Around midnight, I got up to get a glass of water. The kitchen was dark. I walked down the hallway, my bare feet silent on the hardwood floor. And then I heard. David and Claire were in the living room. The door was partially open. The television was off. They were talking in low voices. I shouldn't have listened. I know I shouldn't have. But I couldn't help it. "I can't do this anymore, David," Claire was saying. "I can't live with your mother." "She's not doing anything wrong," David said. His voice was tired. "She just exists." That's the problem. She exists. Everywhere. In my kitchen. In my living room. In my garden. I can't breathe in my own home. She's family, Claire.
She's not my family.
She's your mother. And she doesn't belong here anymore. The words hung in the air. I stood in the hallway, my hand on the wall, my heart pounding. "Where is she supposed to go?" David asked. "She sold her house. She has nowhere else." "That's not my problem. She can get an apartment. She can go to a senior living community. I don't care. I just need her gone." There was a long silence. And then David said, quietly, "I'll talk to her." I didn't wait to hear more. I walked back to my room, silently, carefully. I didn't get the glass of water. I didn't need it anymore. I sat on the edge of my bed, in the dark, and I let the words wash over me. She doesn't belong here anymore. 5 words. 5 words that undid 5 years of trying. I didn't cry. I didn't pack. I just sat there listening to the rain until the sun came up, the aftermath. I didn't tell David I had heard. What would be the point? He would have been embarrassed. He would have made excuses. And nothing would have changed. I started making plans. Quietly. I called my daughter, Sarah, who lives across the country. I told her I was thinking of moving closer to her. She was thrilled. She didn't know the real reason. I didn't tell her. I didn't want her to hate her brother. I started looking at apartments online. Small places. Affordable places. Places where I could live alone, without being a burden, without being unwanted. I stopped eating dinner with the family. I said I wasn't hungry. I started taking walks in the evening, long walks that took me away from the house, away from the whispers I couldn't unhear. Claire noticed.
Of course she noticed.
She didn't ask why. She didn't care why. She was just relieved. One morning, about a month after I heard the whisper, I told David I was moving. He looked up from his coffee, surprised. "Moving? Where?" "There's a small apartment complex for seniors across town. I found a unit. It's affordable. It's close to the library and the park." "Mom, you don't have to." "I know," I said, cutting him off. "I want to. It's time." He didn't argue. He didn't ask why. I think he was relieved too, starting over. Moving was hard. Harder than I let anyone see. I packed my things, the same boxes I had packed 5 years earlier. My china. My photographs. My mother's rocking chair. I loaded them into a small truck and drove across town to my new apartment. It was small. 1 bedroom, 1 bathroom, a kitchen with a window that looked out onto a parking lot. It wasn't the garden. It wasn't the sunny room at the back of the house, but it was mine. No one could whisper about me here. No one could tell me I didn't belong. The first few months were lonely. I would sit in my apartment, listening to the silence, and wonder how I had ended up here. I had done everything right. I had loved my family. I had helped when I could. I had stayed out of the way. And still, I had been pushed out. I started going to the senior center down the street. I met other women my age, women who had their own stories of loss and betrayal and starting over. We played cards. We took walks. We shared meals. And slowly, I began to feel like myself again. Not the old self, the one who had been a wife and a mother in a house full of love, but a new self, a self who had survived something she never thought she could survive. I planted a small garden on my balcony, tomatoes and basil and marigolds. I joined a book club. I started volunteering at the local library, reading to children. It wasn't the life I had imagined, but it was a life. And I was living it, the call. A year passed. Then, too, David visited sometimes, but not often. He would bring the children, and I would watch them play in the small courtyard behind my building, and I would feel grateful for the time I had with them. Claire never came. I didn't expect her to. I didn't want her to. And then, one day, the phone rang. It was David.
His voice was strange.
Heavy. "Mom," he said, "Claire left. She took the kids and went to her mother's. She says she needs space. She says she doesn't know if she wants to come back." I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to feel vindicated. Part of me wanted to say, "I told you so," but I didn't. I just listened. "I'm sorry, Mom," David said. "I'm sorry for everything. I'm sorry I didn't stand up for you. I'm sorry I let her push you out. You were trying to keep the peace," I said. "I understand."
"No," he said.
"I was a coward, and I lost you because of it." I closed my eyes. "You didn't lose me, David. I'm right here." Reconciliation. David came to see me the next day. He sat on my small couch in my small apartment and he cried. He told me about the years of tension, the arguments, the slow unraveling of his marriage. He told me that he should have listened to me. He should have protected me. "I heard her, I said. That night. I heard her say, I didn't belong." David looked up, his eyes wet. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because you wouldn't have believed me. Or you would have believed me, and you would have hated her for it, and it would have destroyed your marriage anyway. There was no outcome." He shook his head. "I'm so sorry, Mom." I reached over and took his hand. "I forgive you. I forgave you a long time ago." It took time. It took more time than I wanted it to. But David and I rebuilt our relationship. He comes for dinner now, every Sunday. He brings the children when he has them. We sit at my small kitchen table, and I cook his favorite meals, and we talk about everything and nothing. Claire and David divorced. I don't know the details. I don't ask. I don't wish her ill. I don't carry anger in my heart. What happened happened. It was painful. It was unfair. But it led me here, to this apartment, to this life, to this version of myself that I didn't know existed. Did I have thought a lot about that whisper? She doesn't belong here anymore. For a long time, those words haunted me. I would hear them in the middle of the night, in the quiet moments, when I was alone. But over time, something shifted. I realized that Claire was right. I didn't belong there. Not because there was something wrong with me, but because that was never my home. It was hers. And I was a guest who had overstayed her welcome. The mistake was not in leaving. The mistake was in thinking I had to belong somewhere that wasn't mine. I belong here now. In this small apartment. In this garden on my balcony. In the book club and the senior center and the library where I read to children. I belong to myself. And that is enough. If there is a lesson in all of this, it is this. You cannot force someone to want you. You cannot argue your way into belonging. Sometimes, the kindest thing you can do for yourself is to walk away. Not in anger. Not in bitterness. But in the quiet understanding that there is a place for you somewhere else. Somewhere you don't have to whisper. Somewhere you are wanted. I heard her whisper. She doesn't belong here anymore. And for a long time, I believed her. But now I know. I belong here. In this life. In this small apartment. In this quiet, Auntie.